the robber barons of the Gilded Age. Everywhere in the Western world there were the robber barons, industrialists who were directly or indirectly controlled by secret societies, and who could accumulate enormous amounts of money as long as they did what was asked of them. This period has different names. In the United States it is known as the Gilded Age, and in Germany as the Gründerzeit, from about the 1860s to the early 1900s. However, this golden age came to an abrupt end with the First World War. In any case, industrialists seem to have been the stewards of the new technologies, and most of today's major entrepreneurs were shaped in one way or another by the transfer of technology from the world's fairs. Emil Rathenau, for example, founded AEG in response to the technical achievements he observed at the world's fairs in Paris, Vienna, and Philadelphia. Some interesting aspects emerge from the analysis of the industrial families. They were, and still are, obsessed with art and other artifacts from the pre-industrial era. The early industrialists literally hoarded entire houses full of sculptures and paintings, as if it was just a matter of making as many remnants of the old world disappear as possible. It remains to be said that thousands of works of art and sculptures were presented at the world exhibitions, which have since largely disappeared. They lived in the most impressive neoclassical buildings, basically palaces, that existed at the time. Mysteriously, however, they had many of these buildings demolished very quickly. Perhaps a little too quickly considering the construction costs. One of the most impressive examples is certainly the Astor House in Manhattan. Among the largest in the entire city, it was supposedly completed in 1896 and demolished already in 1926. And is this photo of the alleged construction of the Villa Hugel of the German industrialist family Krupp really a new building, or rather a renovation project? In any case, it is very likely that all these buildings were already standing and were simply taken by the new power elite. Possibly, then, the term robber barons meant precisely people who had literally stolen their property. Purpose of the World Exhibitions. If it is true that many of the buildings at the World's Fairs already existed and were only renovated, then the destruction of these buildings is one of the largest cover-ups in recent history. Also, this would be further proof that pretty much all countries were already controlled by the cabal 100 years ago, and modern politics was intended from the beginning as a means to infiltrate and control cultures. The systematic destruction of knowledge and the theft of cultural goods and property by the church continued seamlessly with the advent of more contemporary nation-states. With the help of a central monetary system imposed on us, state-legitimized robbery is still the main cause of the transfer of wealth and possessions into the hands of a few. The misappropriation of majestic old-world building sites by the new post-colonial power elite happened at the same time as other events that all seem to be connected. Thus, from the mid-19th century onwards, not only were World's Fairs held in oversized and far too expensive buildings that were completely inappropriate for them, but at the same time the first psychiatric hospitals, insane asylums, were being built. Just like the World Exhibitions, these psychiatric hospitals were architecturally unsuitable for the defined purpose. Architecture always reflects the consciousness of the builders and is defined by its purpose. However, we would expect industrialists to build simply and economically, to use steel and concrete, and by no means to demolish their buildings immediately, but to try to generate income from land and buildings for as long as possible. But we see just the opposite. The buildings at the World's Fairs are detailed, ornate, aesthetic, and far too large and expensive for their purpose. They represent something completely different from the world we know. They represent ancient Rome, the classical ideals of the beautiful, the true, the good, the pursuit of the divine and perfection. The world's fairs connect two completely opposite eras or cultures that should have no points of contact at all. The world of the industrial robber barons and an old world that we can no longer remember, but in which the economic principles we know played no great role.